I was in the middle of a product recall meeting when the call came in. Hi, this is Monica from First Trust Mortgage. We just need a verbal confirmation before finalizing the $375,000 loan attached to your primary residence. Is now a good time? I froze. My screen was still showing spreadsheets. My team was waiting for my input on a supply chain delay. But all I could hear was the number. $375,000. I'm sorry, I said carefully. What loan are you talking about? There was a pause. Monica sounded confused now. The refinance agreement? Signed by both you and your husband, Daniel Carter? We've already processed the first round of paperwork. This is just a final verification. I stood up, walked out of the meeting room, and closed the door behind me. I never signed anything. Silence. Then Monica said, Well, his signature is on everything. And yours too. My hands went cold. I ended the call as politely as I could, made some excuse to my team, and drove home on autopilot. My mind was spinning the entire way. Mortgage refinancing, using the house we bought together, my house, as collateral, without even mentioning it? There had to be a mistake. Maybe it was an identity theft. Maybe someone had forged our documents. But deep down, I already knew. Daniel and I had been off for a while. He'd grown distant over the past year. Late nights at the office. Too many guys' trips that didn't add up. Vague explanations about credit card charges I didn't recognize. I hadn't pushed. I was tired, focused on work. And maybe part of me didn't want to know. But this? This wasn't just emotional distance. This was financial betrayal, intentional, calculated. That night, Daniel walked through the front door like nothing had happened. Kissed me on the cheek. Asked if I wanted Thai or Indian for dinner. I said Thai. He smiled. And in that moment, watching him pull out his phone to place the order, chatting away like we were just another married couple, I knew something was deeply, irreversibly wrong, and I knew I wasn't going to confront him yet because I needed proof. For the next 2 weeks, I played along. I kissed him good morning. I made coffee. I listened to him complain about the weather, his boss, traffic. I nodded when he talked about refinancing the car and how bills are getting tight. I didn't let a single crack show, not one, because I needed time. Time to figure out what he did, how deep it went, and most of all, why. While Daniel slept, I started digging. I went through old tax documents, scanned our shared financial records, and logged into a savings account we hadn't touched in almost a year. Half the balance was gone, transferred to a bank I'd never heard of. I tried to access his laptop, but it was locked. Password protected. He hadn't done that before. So I waited. One night, he fell asleep on the couch with his tablet in hand. I gently slid it from under his arm and opened the email app. No password. Jackpot. What I found hit like a punch to the gut. Subject: Can't wait to decorate our place. Sender Sierra M. Text: Daniel, thank you for everything. This condo is more than I ever imagined. I love the view. I love you. P.S. I left a bottle of wine for when you come back tomorrow. Wear that shirt I like. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen, my fingers clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palm. There it was. Condo, view, come back tomorrow. And Daniel, the man I'd shared a mortgage, a bed, and nearly a decade of my life with, had mortgaged our home to buy another woman a condo. And I hadn't even suspected her name. I took photos of every email, every transfer receipt, every digital thread I could find. I loaded them to a cloud drive only I could access. The more I found, the colder I became. He didn't just cheat. He didn't just lie. He had sold off our future for granite countertops and weekend sex. At night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, 1,000 thoughts crashing into each other. Rage, shame, disgust. But more than anything, disbelief. I kept asking myself, how long had he been planning this? How many nights had he sat across from me smiling while plotting behind my back? Then came the fear. Because once you realize the person you trusted most is capable of this, what else might they be capable of? If Daniel could forge my signature, if he could gamble our home without hesitation, what if something went wrong? What if I pushed him too far? What if I confronted him and he snapped? That fear didn't paralyze me. It sharpened me, made me cautious, strategic. I started noticing the little things too. His phone was always face down. He never left it in the bathroom anymore. He changed his lock screen from a wedding photo to a generic beach scene. He started going to the gym at odd hours, something he hadn't cared about in 5 years. Still, I stayed quiet. I kept collecting. Then one Wednesday night, it happened. I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Got the keys today. She'll love the kitchen. You're my queen." I read it twice. It took a full minute before I realized he'd meant to send it to Sierra. And that's when something broke in me. Not loudly, not with tears. It was a quiet surgical snap, like a cable in an elevator just before the fall. I didn't reply. He walked in 10 minutes later, talking on the phone with a fake laugh I now recognized as his other voice. He kissed the top of my head and said, "You okay?" I smiled. "Just tired." That night I stared at the ceiling for hours, the text echoing in my mind. "You're my queen." The sheer stupidity, the insult. He didn't even have the decency to cheat cleanly. He fumbled, he got sloppy, he got comfortable, and now I had him. But it wasn't enough to scream and throw him out. I wanted more. I wanted everything back. So I scheduled a meeting with an attorney. Quiet downtown office. A woman named Camille who wore all black and didn't flinch once when I laid it out for her. Mortgage fraud, asset misrepresentation, possibly identity forgery, she said, clicking her pen. This is more than infidelity. This is criminal. I want the house. I want to freeze the condo. I want to make sure he walks away with nothing but that stupid gym bag. Camille smiled. Then let's begin. That night, Daniel asked if I wanted to go on a weekend getaway. Just us, he said. Been a while since we disconnected. I almost laughed. Yeah, I said. Been a while? I agreed. Told him I'd look into hotels. Told him I needed it. And while he showered, probably texting Sierra from behind the steam, I called Camille again. I think I want to move quickly, I said. I'm ready. And I was. Not just for the legal battle, not just for the revenge, but for the silence that would follow. For the first time in years, I felt it wouldn't be hollow. It would be peace. Camille didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, she pulled Daniel's full financial records, business accounts, real estate holdings, even dormant credit cards he'd forgotten about. Turns out the man who claimed to be barely getting by had funneled nearly $60,000 into a secondary account over the past 8 months. That account paid for Sierra's condo, the shell company that owned the deed, registered in New Mexico under an anonymous LLC, but Camille traced the bank wires. All roads led back to Daniel. She also confirmed what I feared most. He'd forged my signature. Twice. Once on the mortgage refinance and once on a joint release form to authorize an early withdrawal from our home equity line, money I never even knew we had access to. I sat in Camille's office with my arms folded tightly across my chest as she laid everything out. He's committed 2 prosecutable felonies, she said calmly. Mortgage fraud and forgery. You don't even need the infidelity to make this a winning case. But the infidelity helps. I don't just want to win, I said. I want to shut him down. She smiled faintly. Then you'll need patience. You only get one chance to hit him where it hurts. So I waited. I acted like everything was normal. I cooked dinner. I laughed at his stories. I even let him believe I was planning that weekend getaway. Meanwhile, Camille filed a quiet motion to freeze the assets connected to the shell company. We filed a notice with the bank to dispute the refinance based on fraudulent consent. At work, I kept it together, barely. The hardest part wasn't pretending in front of Daniel. It was pretending in front of myself. There were nights I'd come home, look at him from across the kitchen island, and think, who are you? Not in a dramatic way. Just confusion. Sadness. How could someone share my bed, laugh at my jokes, ask about my day, and at the same time steal from me, lie to me, mock me behind my back? One night, I found myself staring at our wedding album. It had dust on the cover. I flipped through page after page of fake smiles and promises I now knew meant nothing. On the last page, there was a photo of us dancing. He was whispering something in my ear. I remember laughing. I looked at that frozen moment and felt nothing. No hate, no pain, just done. I started documenting everything. Screen recordings of his texts, audio recordings of phone calls when he spoke vaguely about real estate stuff, voice memos I made right after conversations to document tone, words, lies. I even kept a journal, handwritten, just in case. Camille said, You're doing everything right. The moment we drop this on him, he won't even know where to look first. There was only one thing left, Sierra. I didn't want to meet her, I didn't want drama, but I needed leverage. So I sent her an email. Nothing threatening. Just a polite message from a Vanessa Carter with a short line. You may not know me, but I believe we've shared a man. I'd like to talk. Woman to woman, nothing more. She didn't respond right away, but 2 days later I received a reply. I thought you were divorced. I blinked. I read the message again. That one sentence told me everything I needed to know. He told her we were divorced, meaning he wasn't just cheating, he was building a double life. I replied, not yet, but I will be. And you may want to check who's really paying for your condo. A minute later she called me. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. She was young, maybe 26. She sounded shocked, ashamed. She told me Daniel had said he was separated, that he was being bled dry by a cold, controlling ex-wife, that I drained him emotionally and financially. I laughed. He drained our joint account to buy you a 2-bedroom with a skyline view. She didn't argue. She just said, I had no idea. Now you do, I said. I never heard from her again, but I didn't need to. Her silence told me enough. Meanwhile, Daniel kept floating through life like nothing was wrong. He started bringing up kids again, vacations, said he'd been looking at beach houses for the future. I smiled and nodded, knowing the house he really wanted was about to get repossessed. Camille called me one Friday morning. We're ready, she said. Do you want to do this now? I looked out the window. The sky was gray, calm, like the moment before a storm. Yes, I said. Drop everything. Before Camille filed the motion, there was one more person I needed to talk to, someone who knew where all the financial bodies were buried. Rachel. She'd been my best friend since college and worked in real estate compliance for a mid-sized firm in Houston. She was sharp, discreet, and allergic to bullshit. When I told her I needed help tracing a shell company linked to a suspicious condo purchase, she didn't ask for details. She just said, "Give me 24 hours." The next day, she sent me a file. Simple, clean, precise. The LLC was registered in New Mexico, a common trick to hide ownership. But the mailing address? Daniel's old P.O. box from college. The business email? A burner Gmail account linked to his name. The bank account for purchase transfers. One of the same accounts Camille had already flagged. It's airtight, Rachel told me. You're not just walking into court with suspicions. You're walking in with facts. Thank you, I whispered. She paused. You okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. The motion to freeze assets went through in under a week. The court accepted the fraud claim and issued a preliminary injunction, preventing the sale or transfer of the condo. Camille also filed a separate claim disputing the mortgage refinance, supported by the forensic analysis of Daniel's forged signature. Then came the bombshell. We issued a cease and desist letter to Daniel's employer, demanding records of any internal real estate transactions he'd used to launder personal funds. Turns out he'd also funneled consulting bonuses into a private account, one that paid for Sierra's furniture, and he had no idea any of this was coming. Friday afternoon. He walked in the door carrying Thai takeout and a bottle of Pinot like it was just another date night. Babe, he called from the kitchen, they gave us free spring rolls. I stepped into the living room holding the envelope Camille had couriered earlier. That's great, I said calmly. Can we talk? He looked confused, but not worried. Everything okay? I handed him the envelope. You've been served. He blinked. What? Mortgage fraud, forgery, misappropriation of marital assets, and a pending criminal investigations into the shell company tied to the condo you bought for your girlfriend. His face drained of color. I don't... what are you talking about? I picked up my phone and played the voicemail. It was a recording Daniel left by accident on our home line 2 weeks prior, thinking he'd hung up. He was laughing with a friend. Dude, she has no clue. I just told the bank we were doing home renovations. Easy. Condo's basically a gift. I mean, she's worth it, man. Sierra's a goddess. I let it play until the silence kicked in. Daniel was shaking. You set me up. No, I said. You set yourself up. I just paid attention. The next few weeks were chaos. Daniel was placed on administrative leave while his company reviewed the complaint. The bank launched an internal investigation into the mortgage process. The condo remained frozen, and because it was under a fraudulent shell company, Daniel couldn't even enter it without risking a violation of court order. And then came the final nail. Camille uncovered a clause in Daniel's employment contract, a morality clause, which stated that if he were found guilty of fraud or brought legal disrepute to the company, he'd forfeit all stock options and be terminated without severance. We submitted everything, and just like that, Daniel lost his job. He tried to fight back, filed a counterclaim saying I was emotionally manipulative and financially controlling. The judge dismissed it in 20 seconds. The day our divorce finalized, he walked into court in a wrinkled suit and avoided eye contact the entire time. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I stood up, looked him straight in the eye, and said loud enough for the courtroom to hear, "You didn't just betray me. You gambled our home, our safety, our future, for someone who barely knows your last name." He looked away. I got the house. I got full ownership of our remaining assets. I got legal clearance to pursue further damages if I chose to, but I didn't ask for more. I already had what I needed, closure. A month later, Daniel texted me from a different number. "I made mistakes. I see that now. Maybe someday you'll forgive me." I didn't reply. A week after that, Sierra messaged me again on Instagram. A single line. "He's trying to contact me again." I blocked him. "You deserve better." I didn't reply to her either, because none of them were part of my life anymore, and they never would be again. Life after Daniel was quiet, peaceful, full of space I didn't know I needed. I went back to hiking on Sundays. I signed up for an art class on Wednesday nights. Rachel and I took a trip to Santa Fe, where we drank wine on rooftops and talked about nothing that hurt. One evening I stood in my kitchen, the same one Daniel almost cost me, and realized I hadn't thought about him all day. Not once. It wasn't a triumphant moment. It was a quiet one, but it meant everything. Because finally the storm had passed, and I was still standing. 8 months. That's how long it took before I started to feel like a person again. Not someone recovering, not someone hiding pain behind work and errands. Just me. I left the company I'd spent 9 years at and took a quieter job at a smaller firm. Less money, more peace. I moved into a little house 15 minutes from my mother's place, bought a reliable car, painted my kitchen lemon yellow. And one Saturday afternoon I found my old sketchbook in a dusty storage bin. I hadn't opened it in years. Not since Daniel told me art was a nice hobby, not a life plan. I sat down at the kitchen table and started to draw again. No goal, no pressure, just pencil to paper. And for the first time in a long time, my hands didn't shake. A few weeks later, I got a message on Instagram. It was Sierra. "I just want to say I'm sorry. I truly didn't know he was married. He lied to me, too. I would have walked away if I had known." I stared at it for a while, then I deleted it. Not out of spite, just because I didn't need it. Closure didn't require permission from people who helped hurt you. Forgiveness wasn't owed. Peace was earned. Daniel tried too. A message popped up one night. "Vanessa, I miss you. I messed up. I think about you every day." I read it once, then blocked the number. I didn't need him to know how well I was doing. That wasn't the point. The point was, I finally stopped measuring my worth by what someone else failed to see in me. Trust is not given once. It's tested every day. And once it breaks, it never sounds the same again. Daniel didn't just break my heart. He broke the version of me that once tolerated being second to someone else's ego. But maybe that version needed to go. Because now, I choose differently. I listen when something feels off. I protect what I've built. I say no without apologizing. I don't perform for love anymore. And no, I don't hate him. I don't waste energy wishing him harm. He already lost the best thing he ever had. I didn't destroy him. He did that all by himself. Love is not a license to lose yourself. Marriage is not a contract to surrender your identity. And trust isn't a one-time deposit. It's a living thing. You nurture it or you watch it die. So protect your peace. Honor your intuition. And if someone shows you their truth, believe them the first time. Because the greatest revenge is not making them regret what they did. It's showing them you never needed them to begin with. Because the greatest revenge is not making them regret what they did. It's showing them you never needed them to begin with. If this story hit you in any way, don't forget to follow for more real-life twists and powerful comebacks. You never know. The next one might just sound a little too familiar.